March 1943, Lulworth Camp, Dorset, England. Rain hammers against corrugated iron roofs where tank crews huddle around paraffin heaters, studying intelligence reports that read like obituaries. Another armored regiment has been shattered in North Africa. 17 Shermans destroyed in minutes by a single Tiger tank that withdrew unscathed. The mathematics are simple and merciless. The Sherman 75mm gun cannot penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor beyond 300 yards. The Tiger's 88mm can destroy a Sherman at 2,000. British tankers are being sent to fight dragons with pocket knives. In a corner of the maintenance shed, gunner George Brighty studies a Sherman's turret ring with calipers and a notepad covered in calculations. His commanding officer has already dismissed his proposal as engineering fantasy and a gunner's delusion. The idea: mount the 17-pounder anti-tank gun, a weapon so powerful it can punch through any German armor at any combat range. Inside the Sherman's turret, everyone knows it's impossible. The 17-pounder is enormous, designed for towed carriages with crews of 7. The Sherman's turret barely accommodates its existing gun. Brighty measures again, checks his mathematics, and sees what the engineers refuse to imagine: a way. By early 1943, British tank doctrine has collided with German engineering reality and shattered like thin ice. The Churchill infantry tank, slow, reliable, adequately armored, cannot match the mobility requirements of breakthrough operations. The Cromwell cruiser tank, faster and more maneuverable, carries the same impotent gun as the Sherman. The Valentine is obsolete. Britain's armor force depends entirely on American lend-lease. Thousands of M4 Sherman medium tanks arriving monthly from Detroit, Cleveland, and Gary. The Sherman is a logistical miracle and a tactical compromise. Its radial aircraft engine, welded hull construction, and standardized components make it mass-producible at rates the Germans cannot match. A Sherman destroyed in Normandy can be replaced within days. A Panther or Tiger takes months. But American tank doctrine, forged in the vast spaces of theoretical Soviet planes, assumes tanks fight tanks rarely. American Shermans are designed to support infantry, overrun positions, and exploit breakthroughs. Tank destroyers, specialized vehicles like the M10 and M36, are supposed to handle enemy armor. British experience in North Africa has proven this doctrine fatally optimistic. German tactical flexibility concentrates armor at decisive points. Tiger tanks appear where they're least expected, anchoring defensive positions that devour attacking tank formations. At Villers-Bocage, one Tiger will destroy 25 Allied tanks and vehicles in 15 minutes. At Normandy, Tigers will stalk hedgerow country like armored predators, their 88mm guns reaching across entire fields while Shermans must close to suicidal ranges. The British 17-pounder anti-tank gun represents the Allies' answer to German armor superiority. Developed in 1942, it fires a 17-pound projectile at 3,000 feet per second, sufficient velocity to penetrate any tank in existence at combat ranges exceeding a mile. Towed by trucks and deployed in concealed positions, 17-pounder batteries have destroyed Tigers, Panthers, and Ferdinand tank destroyers. But towed guns are defensive weapons. They cannot exploit breakthroughs, cannot pursue retreating enemies, cannot fight the mobile armored warfare that dominates Western European terrain. British designers have attempted to mount the 17-pounder in domestic tank designs. The Challenger, a lengthened Cromwell hull with enlarged turret, enters limited production but proves mechanically unreliable and too tall for concealment. The Archer, a 17-pounder mounted backwards on a Valentine chassis, offers firepower but ridiculous ergonomics, requiring the vehicle to reverse toward the enemy. Britain needs a mobile, reliable platform for its best anti-tank gun. George Brighty sees the solution that engineering committees have declared impossible. Brighty's background makes his proposal simultaneously ridiculous and credible. He is not a university-trained engineer, but a career gunner who understands turret mechanisms through thousands of hours inside tanks, maintaining breaches, calculating sight adjustments, loading rounds under combat stress. He knows the 17-pounder intimately from anti-tank battery service. He has measured Sherman turrets during maintenance duties. His calculations emerge from practical experience rather than theoretical design principles. The engineering establishment's objections are not unreasonable. The 17-pounder is a massive weapon, 12 feet long, weighing over 1 ton without mounting hardware. Its recoil force, generated by propelling a 17-pound projectile at high velocity, requires substantial breech mechanisms and recoil buffers. The Sherman turret, designed around the smaller 75mm gun, offers limited internal volume. The turret ring diameter, the circular opening through which the turret connects to the hull, constrains how large a gun can physically rotate inside the fighting compartment. Previous American attempts to upgun the Sherman have produced the M1 76mm, a weapon with better penetration than the 75mm, but still inadequate against Tiger and Panther frontal armor. The British need something dramatically more powerful. Mathematical analysis suggests the 17-pounder simply will not fit. Its breech mechanism would interfere with turret traverse. The gun tube would protrude excessively forward, affecting vehicle balance. The recoil would damage turret structure. But Brighty has noticed something. The 17-pounder, designed for towed carriage, includes components unnecessary in a tank installation. The gun shield can be eliminated. The turret armor provides protection. The elaborate trail system and wheels for transport serve no purpose. The carriage elevation mechanism can be simplified. Most critically, the breech can be rotated 90 degrees, mounting it sideways within the turret. This unconventional orientation creates clearance for the loader to function, allows the gunner to operate sighting equipment, and positions the commander's station safely behind the gun. His sketches show a recoil system modified to absorb forces within the turret ring constraints. The gun tube extends forward, yes, making the vehicle nose-heavy and unmistakable, but not impossibly so. The modification requires cutting away the Sherman's original gun mount, welding in reinforced mounting brackets, redesigning the internal stowage for the 17-pounder's larger ammunition, and accepting reduced crew comfort. It is theoretically possible. Barely. If engineering tolerances align perfectly, and if structural modifications don't compromise hull integrity, and if combat testing proves the concept survivable, the question is whether military bureaucracy will authorize such an unorthodox experiment. January 1944. The British Ministry of Supply convenes at Woolwich Arsenal, where prototype development programs compete for desperately limited resources and manufacturing capacity. Britain's industrial base, stretched thin supporting bomber production, naval construction, and infantry equipment, cannot afford failed experiments. Tank production particularly suffers from complexity and resource constraints. Each hour of engineering effort must produce maximum battlefield effect. Major George Witheridge, Directorate of Tank Design, reviews Brighty's proposal with the profound skepticism of a man who has watched promising concepts fail at the prototype stage. The paper calculations are intriguing, but paper calculations always are. Metal and physics are less forgiving. Previous attempts to force oversized weapons into undersized turrets have produced mechanical nightmares. Guns that cannot elevate sufficiently, loaders crushed by recoil mechanisms, commanders blinded by breech blocks positioned across observation ports. But Witheridge also understands the strategic mathematics. Operation Overlord, the invasion of northwestern Europe, approaches rapidly. Intelligence estimates predict the Germans will deploy Tiger and Panther tanks in concentrated formations to contain the beachhead. British and American armor will face enemy tanks qualitatively superior in firepower and protection. Sheer numbers may overwhelm German defenses, but the casualty ratios will be catastrophic. Every Tiger destroyed requires, on average, 5 Allied tanks lost. Mathematics that translate to burned men and wrecked crews. Witheridge authorizes a feasibility study. One Sherman, an early production M4A4 with the Chrysler multibank engine, is allocated to the project. One 17-pounder is released from artillery stocks. A team of Royal Ordnance engineers under Lieutenant Colonel George Brighty, the gunner has been rapidly commissioned, receives 8 weeks to produce a working prototype or abandon the concept entirely. The engineering begins in a Woolwich workshop where Sherman and 17-pounder occupy opposite ends of a concrete floor, like mismatched puzzle pieces. Engineers measure, calculate, model with wooden mock-ups. The turret interior is cramped, even empty. Introducing a weapon 50% larger than the original gun seems geometrically absurd. The 17-pounder's breech, rotated sideways per Brighty's design, creates a narrow corridor where the loader must function. The recoil mechanism, compressed to fit available space, generates concerns about metal fatigue and repeated firing stress. The first mounting attempt fails. The gun elevates but cannot depress sufficiently. The breech contacts the turret roof. The mounting brackets crack during recoil testing. The ammunition storage racks interfere with turret traverse. Each problem requires redesign, new fabrication, additional testing. Weeks consume themselves in grinding iteration. February 1944. The psychological dynamics inside the Woolwich workshop mirror the mechanical challenges. Engineers trained in conventional design methodology confront a weapon installation that violates established principles. The sideways mounted breech requires the loader to operate in a confined space, perpendicular to normal procedures. Loading drills, practiced thousands of times in standard gun configurations, must be relearned. The gunner's position, cramped behind the traversing mechanism, offers limited visibility. The commander, positioned behind the breech, must coordinate crew actions while partially blind to the gun's orientation. Tank crews selected for evaluation testing express profound reservations. Sergeant Thomas Murphy, veteran of North Africa, climbs into the prototype and emerges shaking his head. "It's a bloody coffin, sir. One hit and that breech will come back through all of us." His concern is legitimate. The 17-pounder's recoil, even buffered, generates tremendous force in the confined turret space. In combat, a penetrating shell could turn the gun mechanism into a guillotine. But Murphy also understands what the 17-pounder represents. He has watched Shermans burn after Tiger encounters, has seen friends evacuate flaming hulls while German armor withdrew untouched. He has felt the helplessness of firing upon enemy tanks beyond effective range, shells bouncing harmlessly off frontal armor, while return fire punches through Sherman hulls like paper. The 17-pounder offers something British tankers have never possessed: the ability to kill German heavy tanks at the first shot, at ranges where the enemy cannot effectively retaliate. The mathematics of survival change fundamentally. A Sherman Firefly, the name emerges informally during testing, referring to the prominent gun tube extending forward like an insect's antenna, can engage Tigers at 1,500 yards with high probability of penetration. The Tiger, accustomed to immunity from Allied tank fire, becomes vulnerable. The psychological equation reverses. German tank commanders, previously aggressive in exploiting their armor superiority, must now assume any Sherman might be a Firefly carrying death at long range. Testing proceeds through March. The prototype fires hundreds of rounds, proving the recoil system adequate and the mounting brackets structurally sound. Accuracy tests demonstrate the 17-pounder retains its extraordinary precision even in the cramped turret installation. Loading drills improve as crews adapt to the unconventional breech position. The Firefly will never be comfortable. Crew survivability in the event of penetrating hits remains questionable, but it is functional. And lethality in armored warfare transcends comfort. April 1944. The Ministry of Supply authorizes full production conversion. The production challenge becomes logistical rather than technical. Britain cannot manufacture Shermans, only convert them. Standard M4s arrive from American factories at British ports, are transported to conversion facilities at Woolwich, Leeds, and Birmingham, where ordnance teams remove the 75mm gun installations and retrofit 17-pounders. The process requires approximately 5 days per vehicle, cutting away original mounting hardware, welding reinforced gun cradles, installing modified recoil systems, repositioning ammunition racks, repainting recognition markings. The conversion bottleneck is the 17-pounder itself. British gun production, optimized for towed artillery pieces, cannot immediately scale to tank gun specifications. The 17-pounder for Firefly installation requires shortened barrel length, still 12 feet but reduced from the towed version's 15, and modified recoil mechanisms. Each gun must be individually fitted and test-fired, as tolerance variations between Shermans and artillery pieces create unique adjustment requirements. By May 1944, production achieves 30 conversions weekly, inadequate for the thousands of Shermans being concentrated in southern England for Operation Overlord, but sufficient to equip reconnaissance troops and specialized tank destroyer units. British doctrine evolves rapidly. Fireflies will be distributed at approximately 1 per troop of 4 tanks, providing each maneuver element with anti-armor capability while maintaining numerical superiority through standard Shermans. American observers study the Firefly program with mixed reactions. U.S. Army Ordnance remains committed to the 76mm gun and dedicated tank destroyer doctrine. The Firefly's unconventional design, its prominent gun tube, asymmetrical turret modifications, cramped crew conditions, violates American engineering aesthetics and operational philosophy. American tank doctrine emphasizes crew survivability and mechanical reliability over firepower maximization. The Firefly trades comfort and safety for lethality, a bargain American commanders find distasteful. But some American units request Firefly allocation. The 2nd Armored Division, scheduled for early commitment in Normandy, negotiates for British crewed Fireflies to support breakthrough operations. The arrangements remain informal. British troops will operate the specialized Shermans while supporting American tactical formations. The partnership reflects pragmatic recognition that German armor superiority requires asymmetric responses. Intelligence officers brief tank crews on engagement protocols. Fireflies must avoid distinctive identification. German gunners, recognizing the elongated gun tube, will prioritize Firefly destruction to eliminate the primary anti-tank threat. Recommendations include camouflaging the barrel tip, positioning Fireflies behind standard Shermans during approach movements, and initiating engagements from concealed positions to maximize surprise. The Firefly's existence transforms tactical calculations before firing a single combat round. German intelligence, detecting unusual Sherman variants during reconnaissance, begins warning tank commanders of enhanced Allied anti-armor capabilities. The psychological war begins before the shooting war, June 6, 1944. Normandy beaches. The Firefly's combat debut occurs not during the initial amphibious assault. Few tanks survive D-Day beach crossings intact, but in the grinding battles inland where Allied armor pushes through hedgerow country toward Caen. The Norman bocage, ancient farmland divided by earthen banks topped with dense vegetation, creates claustrophobic killing grounds ideal for defensive armor tactics. German Tigers and Panthers position themselves at hedgerow intersections, commanding open fields where Allied tanks must advance across exposed ground. June 13th, Villers Bocage. SS Obersturmführer Michael Wittmann, commanding a Tiger Winter, ambushes British 7th Armored Division columns advancing through the village. In 15 minutes, Wittmann's Tiger destroys 25 Allied tanks and vehicles, exploiting the Tiger's invulnerability to standard Sherman armament. The massacre demonstrates precisely the tactical problem Fireflies were designed to solve, but no Fireflies are present during the engagement. The 7th Armored's Fireflies, delayed by mechanical issues and traffic congestion, arrive hours after Wittmann withdraws. The near miss crystallizes Firefly deployment doctrine. British commanders recognize that distributing Fireflies thinly across all units dilutes their effectiveness. Concentrated Firefly deployment, organizing dedicated troops of 3 or 4 Fireflies supported by standard Shermans, creates anti-armor hunter groups capable of countering German heavy tank concentrations. June 27th, near Shu. A troop of Fireflies from the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry encounters 3 Panthers advancing through morning fog. The engagement occurs at 800 yards, beyond effective range for the Panthers to reliably penetrate Sherman frontal armor, but well within the 17-pounder's lethal envelope. Sergeant Gordon, commanding the lead Firefly, fires first. The 17-pounder's armor-piercing round strikes the leading Panther's glacis plate, penetrates and detonates the ammunition storage. The Panther explodes, turret lifting free and crashing back onto the burning hull. The second Panther, identifying the threat, traverses toward Gordon's Firefly. The German commander's tactical calculation, eliminate the Firefly to restore armor superiority, costs him the seconds Gordon's gunner needs for a second shot. The round penetrates the Panther's turret face. The third Panther reverses into tree cover and withdraws, abandoning the engagement rather than face the Firefly's overwhelming firepower advantage. Gordon's crew feels not triumph, but profound relief. They have survived an encounter that would have destroyed standard Sherman troops entirely. The Panther's frontal armor, 120mm sloped at 55 degrees, is impervious to the Sherman 75mm at any combat range. The Firefly has transformed a certain defeat into a decisive victory. The word spreads through British armored regiments. The 17-pounder works. July 1944. The Normandy campaign's grinding attrition creates unanticipated Firefly demand. British tank losses exceed replacement rates. German defensive tactics concentrate anti-tank weapons and armor at critical sectors, destroying Allied tanks faster than American factories, and British conversion facilities can replace them. But Firefly losses run proportionally lower than standard Sherman losses. The 17-pounder's ability to engage German armor at extended ranges, before German tanks can effectively return fire, provides survivability advantages that offset the Firefly's tactical prominence and targeting priority. Statistical analysis from British Second Army reveals striking patterns. Standard Sherman troops engage German Panthers at average ranges of 400 yards, suicidally close, where Panther armor remains largely impervious, while Panther guns devastate Sherman hulls. Firefly troops engage at average ranges of 900 yards, exploiting the 17-pounder's superior ballistics to destroy German tanks before closing to ranges where German superiority dominates. The tactical mathematics favor Fireflies dramatically. Average combat losses of 1.2 Fireflies per 10 German heavy tanks destroyed, compared to 5.3 standard Shermans per 10 German tanks destroyed. British commanders request accelerated Firefly production. The Ministry of Supply responds that conversion rates are constrained not by Sherman availability, but by 17-pounder gun production. British ordnance factories, operating at maximum capacity, produce approximately 150 17-pounders monthly, sufficient for towed anti-tank batteries, Firefly conversions, and other applications, but insufficient to convert all Shermans to Firefly standard. American officers observing Firefly effectiveness renew requests for U.S. units to receive conversions. The political and logistical complications are substantial. American tank doctrine remains committed to separate tank and tank destroyer forces. U.S. Army Ordnance officially maintains that the 76mm Sherman provides adequate anti-armor capability. Admitting the Firefly's superiority would implicitly acknowledge doctrinal failure and potentially complicate American tank production programs. But field commanders care less about doctrine than about bringing their men home alive. Informal arrangements proliferate. American armored divisions operating alongside British formations borrow Fireflies for specific operations. British liaison officers embed with American tank battalions, bringing Firefly expertise and occasionally Firefly vehicles. The battlefield pragmatism overrides institutional resistance. German responses evolve correspondingly. Intelligence briefings warn tank commanders to identify and prioritize Firefly targets. The elongated gun tube makes visual identification relatively simple, even at combat ranges. German doctrine advises engaging Fireflies first, accepting temporary exposure to standard Sherman fire to eliminate the primary anti-armor threat. The Firefly's prominence has made it simultaneously invaluable and conspicuous. British crews begin camouflaging gun tubes, painting false muzzle brakes on standard Shermans to confuse German targeting, and employing Fireflies from concealed positions. The tactical chess match intensifies. August 1944. Operation Totalize, the Canadian First Army's offensive toward Falaise, employs Fireflies in concentrated anti-armor formations for the first time. Previous operations distributed Fireflies across reconnaissance troops and combined arms battle groups. Totalize experiments with dedicated Firefly squadrons, 16 Fireflies supported by standard Shermans and infantry, tasked specifically with destroying German armor concentrations blocking the Canadian advance. The tactical innovation reflects hard-won understanding. German defensive doctrine in Normandy employs armor as mobile counterattack forces, allowing infantry and anti-tank guns to absorb initial Allied assaults before Tiger and Panther battalions strike Allied penetrations. Allied commanders have learned bloodily that breakthrough operations require not just defeating German frontline defenses, but surviving the subsequent armored counterattacks. Firefly squadrons provide mobile anti-armor screens. Rather than advancing with leading infantry, Fireflies position behind initial assault waves, establishing overwatch positions commanding likely German counterattack routes. When Tiger and Panther companies emerge from reserve positions to crush Canadian penetrations, they encounter prepared Firefly positions at ranges where the 17-pounder's superiority dominates. August 8th, dawn. 12 Tigers from SS Panzer Regiment 12 counterattack Canadian positions near Sintho. The Tigers advance confidently. Their operational pattern has succeeded repeatedly throughout the Normandy campaign. Allied infantry, pinned by German artillery, cannot maneuver. Allied anti-tank guns towed and static can be bypassed or suppressed. Sherman tanks, vulnerable to the 80mm gun beyond 2,500 yards, must either withdraw or die. But the Firefly squadron from the Canadian 4th Armored Division waits in concealed positions along the ridgeline. At 1,200 yards, the Tigers remain unaware they have entered the killing zone. The Firefly commander, Major Jack Miller, coordinates fire via radio, an innovation enabled by the British practice of installing radio sets in every tank, contrasting with German practice of limiting radios to command vehicles. The Fireflies fire simultaneously. 8 Tigers are hit in the opening salvo, 3 penetrated immediately, 5 damaged. The Tiger formation, suddenly facing unanticipated firepower parity, halts to identify threats. The pause costs them additional casualties as Firefly gunners reload and fire again. Within minutes, the Tiger counterattack has collapsed, survivors withdrawing rather than pressing into the engagement. The Germans lose 9 Tigers destroyed and 3 damaged beyond recovery. The Fireflies lose 1 vehicle, struck by a fortunate long-range shot. The exchange ratio, 12 German heavy tanks for 1 Firefly, represents tactical mathematics impossible for standard Sherman formations. Firefly doctrine has evolved from desperate improvisation to refined operational art. September 1944. The liberation of France accelerates as German forces withdraw toward the Rhine. Allied armor pursues across open country where mobility and logistics matter more than individual tank duels. The operational environment shifts from hedgerow fighting where every field is a potential ambush to maneuver warfare where supply lines and mechanical reliability determine success. Fireflies, designed for high-intensity anti-armor combat, reveal limitations in pursuit operations. The 17-pounder's ammunition, heavy, bulky, stowed in reduced quantities compared to 75mm rounds, constrains sustained operations. A standard Sherman carries 90 75mm rounds. A Firefly carries only 52 17-pounder rounds. Extended engagements deplete Firefly ammunition rapidly, reducing them to expensive observers until supply trucks arrive. The prominent gun tube, advantageous in defensive positions where concealment minimizes visibility, becomes problematic during rapid advances. The forward weight affects handling, particularly crossing damaged bridges and navigating rubble-choked streets. The Firefly's turret, modified extensively to accommodate the 17-pounder, develops mechanical issues. Traverse mechanisms jam, recoil buffers leak, mounting brackets crack under sustained firing stress. British maintenance battalions struggle with Firefly-specific repairs. The conversion's uniqueness means spare parts remain scarce. A damaged recoil buffer requires 17-pounder components, not interchangeable with standard Sherman parts. Gun tube replacements, necessary after approximately 400 rounds due to barrel wear, must come from British ordnance stocks rather than American supply depots flooding Europe with standard Sherman parts. Yet the Firefly's reputation ensures continued production. German armor, though retreating, remains qualitatively superior. The new Panther Aus G, entering service in autumn 1944, features improved frontal armor immune even to the 17-pounder at certain angles. German tank destroyer battalions deploy Jagdpanthers, Panthers with fixed casemates mounting 80mm guns, combining Panther armor with firepower matching the Tiger. Allied intelligence projects that the final battles in Germany itself will occur in terrain favoring defense, urban environments, river crossings, fortified positions. The operational environment will resemble Normandy's intensity more than France's mobile campaigns. Firefly production continues, with monthly conversion rates reaching 60 vehicles by October. American forces, having resisted Firefly adoption throughout the summer, quietly begin requesting conversions. The U.S. 3rd Armored Division receives 12 Fireflies in September. The 2nd Armored Division requests 30. American crews, initially skeptical of the cramped, uncomfortable, and conspicuous British conversion, recognize the 17-pounder's combat value overrides ergonomic complaints. The Firefly, born from one gunner's ridiculous calculation, has become indispensable. Its existence has transformed armored warfare doctrine, forcing German tactical adaptations and enabling Allied operations previously deemed impossible. December 1944. The Ardennes Offensive, Germany's surprise winter counterattack through Belgium, tests Firefly effectiveness under the worst possible conditions. German armor, concentrated secretly and committed in overwhelming force, achieves initial surprise and rapid penetration. Tiger IIs, King Tigers, mounting 80mm guns and frontal armor up to 180m thick, spearhead German attacks. The King Tiger is impervious to standard Allied tank armament at any practical range. American tank battalions, caught in the initial assault, suffer catastrophic losses. The 75mm Sherman proves utterly inadequate against King Tigers, and even standard Tigers and Panthers committed in unprecedented density. Entire American armored companies are destroyed attempting to hold critical road junctions. The tactical mathematics that favor numerical superiority collapse when German qualitative superiority reaches the extreme levels present in the Ardennes. British XXX Corps, rushed south to contain the German penetration, brings substantial Firefly concentrations. The 29th Armored Brigade deploys with Fireflies, comprising nearly 25% of their tank strength, far higher than standard distributions. The British position defensive lines along likely German advance routes, establishing killing zones where Fireflies can exploit their range advantage. December 23 near Celle. The British 3rd Royal Tank Regiment engages German spearheads from prepared positions. King Tigers advance confidently, their crews knowing that Allied tanks cannot effectively harm them. At 400 yards, the Fireflies open fire. The 17-pounders tungsten-cored sabot rounds, new ammunition just entering service, sacrificing explosive effect for pure kinetic penetration, strike King Tiger frontal armor. The first rounds fail to penetrate. The King Tiger's glacis plate, 150 millimeters at extreme slope angles, defeats even sabot rounds at oblique impacts. But the Firefly gunners adjust, targeting turret faces and gun mantlets where armor is thinner and angles less favorable. The second volley achieves penetrations. 2 King Tigers burn. The German advance halts as commanders reassess. For the first time in the Ardennes offensive, German heavy armor has encountered effective opposition. The King Tigers, previously invulnerable, face a weapon capable of killing them at ranges where their own superiority remains contested. The psychological impact matches the tactical effect. German tank commanders, accustomed to immunity, now experience the vulnerability Allied tankers have felt throughout the war. The Firefly crews feel no triumph, only exhaustion and recognition of mortality. They have survived encounters that destroy standard Shermans, but survival is relative. The 17-pounder makes them targets. German artillery observers prioritize Firefly positions. German tank commanders maneuver to engage Fireflies at close range where even King Tiger armor holds advantages. January 1945. The Ardennes bulge collapses as German forces withdraw across the Rhine. Allied armies prepare for final operations into Germany itself. The Firefly's role has solidified, not as a universal Sherman replacement, but as a specialized anti-armor weapon distributed according to operational requirements. British armored divisions maintain approximately 1 Firefly per troop. Reconnaissance units deploy higher concentrations. Assault brigades tasked with breaching fortified positions receive dedicated Firefly squadrons. Production totals reveal the program's scale and limitations. Between June 1944 and May 1945, British conversion facilities produce approximately 2,100 Fireflies, substantial but representing only a fraction of the 17,000 Shermans serving in British armored formations. The 17-pounder remains the bottleneck. British gun production cannot scale to convert all Shermans, nor would such conversion make tactical sense. The Firefly's limitations in ammunition capacity and mechanical complexity suit it for specialized roles rather than general deployment. George Brighty, now Lieutenant Colonel Brighty commanding a tank regiment, reflects on the weapon he envisioned in that Dorset maintenance shed. The Firefly has killed thousands of German tanks. Exact statistics remain classified, but operational research indicates Fireflies account for approximately 60% of all German armor destroyed by British tank forces, despite representing only 12% of British tank strength. The 17-pounder's extraordinary penetration and accuracy, combined with the Sherman's reliability and mobility, created a weapon system exceeding the sum of its components. But Brighty also understands the costs. Firefly crews suffer casualty rates higher than standard Sherman crews. The Firefly's prominence makes it a priority target, and the cramped turret reduces crew survivability during penetrating hits. The mechanical complications create maintenance burdens. The conversion program diverted resources from other programs, including British-designed tanks that might have offered superior performance, had engineering efforts concentrated there instead. The counterfactual calculations are ultimately meaningless. The Firefly was available when needed, worked adequately despite its compromises, and provided British armor with capabilities they would otherwise have lacked entirely. Whether a better solution might have emerged given different design choices or resource allocations is historically moot. The Firefly fought the war that occurred, not theoretical alternatives. April 1945. British armored divisions cross the Rhine and drive into Germany. Fireflies lead reconnaissance elements, their 17-pounders ready for encounters with the remaining Tigers and Panthers defending the collapsing Reich. The weapon born from one gunner's ridiculous mathematics has become orthodox doctrine. May 7, 1945. Germany surrenders. The final accounting begins. Operational analysis, lessons learned, evaluation of equipment effectiveness. British Army operational research sections compile statistics from 18 months of combat. Tank losses by type, ammunition expenditure, engagement ranges, crew casualties, mechanical reliability, logistical requirements. The data confirms what field commanders already know viscerally. The Firefly represents one of the war's most effective improvised weapon systems. Its kill-to-loss ratio against German armor exceeds any other Allied tank by substantial margins. Its psychological impact, forcing German tank commanders to modify tactics and accept vulnerability, influences battles beyond quantifiable kill statistics. But the data also reveals uncomfortable truths. Standard Shermans, derided by crews as Ronsons, lighters that ignite reliably, actually demonstrate survivability comparable to or better than German tanks when accounting for operational factors. The Sherman's high crew survival rate, enabled by escape hatches, careful ammunition storage, and low silhouette design, means experienced crews remain in service longer. German tanks, though individually superior, burn just as readily when penetrated, and their crews escape less frequently. The Firefly's prominence in British tactical success obscures the reality that numerical superiority, logistical sustainability, and tactical competence matter more than individual weapon performance. British armored divisions succeed not because Fireflies dominate battles, but because Fireflies provide sufficient anti-armor capability to enable maneuver operations that would otherwise stall against German armor concentrations. The Firefly is a force multiplier, not a war winner. American Army analysts reach similar conclusions from different perspectives. U.S. forces, having fought the same battles with different equipment ratios, achieved comparable results. The American 76mm Sherman, less capable than the Firefly but more available, proved adequate when employed in appropriate tactical frameworks. American tank destroyer doctrine, though imperfect, provided anti-armor capabilities through different organizational means. The lesson is not that Brighty's innovation was unnecessary, but that his innovation was sufficient. The Firefly did not need to be the best theoretically possible anti-armor tank. It needed to be good enough, available in adequate numbers, at the critical moment when Allied forces required capabilities they otherwise lacked. Brighty's ridiculous idea succeeded not through engineering perfection, but through practical adequacy. The 17-pounder mounted in a Sherman turret violated design orthodoxy, compromised crew comfort, and created maintenance complications. But it worked. And in war, working adequately when needed matters infinitely more than theoretical perfection delivered too late. The Sherman Firefly enters post-war service with British and Commonwealth armored forces, gradually replaced through the 1950s by purpose-designed tanks incorporating the lessons learned from wartime improvisation. The 17-pounder evolves into the 20-pounder, and eventually the Royal Ordnance L7 105mm gun, a weapon so effective it becomes NATO standard, arming American M60 tanks, German Leopard 1s, and dozens of other designs worldwide. The lineage from Brighty's improvised conversion to modern tank armament runs direct and clear. George Brighty himself returns to civilian life, his wartime service recognized with the Military Cross, but his fundamental contribution, the initial insight that enabled Firefly creation, never achieving the public recognition awarded to more visible innovations. He works as a mechanical engineer in Coventry, designing automotive components, and dies in 1987 at age 73. His obituary mentions military service but not the Firefly specifically. The weapon he envisioned exists by then only in museums, a historical curiosity from a war fought before precision-guided munitions and composite armor. But military historians recognize the Firefly as case study in innovation under constraints. Brighty's success came not from revolutionary technology but from creative application of existing components. The 17-pounder existed. The Sherman existed. Brighty's insight was recognizing they could be united despite engineering orthodoxy declaring it impossible. His innovation was methodological, questioning assumptions, measuring carefully, calculating precisely, and proving concepts through practical demonstration rather than theoretical debate. The broader lesson extends beyond tank design. Institutional resistance to unconventional solutions reflects not stupidity, but risk management. Engineering committees that dismissed Brighty's proposal understood that failed experiments consume resources and time that successful conventional approaches would deploy effectively. Their skepticism was justified by experience. Most unconventional proposals fail for good reasons. Brighty's success came from being correct about a specific technical problem at a specific historical moment, not from possessing general wisdom unavailable to trained engineers. War rewards adequacy under constraints more than perfection without limits. The Firefly was never the ideal tank. It was the achievable tank, delivered in sufficient numbers at the critical time. Brighty's ridiculous idea made the Sherman Firefly a tiger's worst nightmare, not through engineering brilliance but through practical adequacy, good enough to kill, available when needed, and employable by ordinary soldiers under terrible conditions. Sometimes in war and engineering both, that is precisely enough.